As an artist, you never stop learning and growing. Even though I've been making dolls for 12 years now, I'm still always trying out new ideas, techniques and materials. This week, I decided to make a beaded hanging clown doll, playing with light, sound and texture. But things don't always go to plan first time. I'm starting with a pale neutral shade for the head and grey star print cotton for the body. The limbs are all going to be strings of red and white glass beads that catch the light. I'm going to add some metal beads to the ends, and how about some tinkling bells? I've got a selection of ribbon and lace with different textures. I kind of want to use some velvet. I struggle a bit with velvety textures, but I'll figure that out later. I'm excited about this one, so let's get started. I'm stuffing the head and body with some polyester fibre. This part is quite quick with a beaded doll as there's no limb pieces to stuff and joint together. I've always made beaded dolls with a fixed neck joint before, but I want to see how this one works with a button jointed neck, so she has a bit more movement. I'm anchoring the thread with a button in the middle of the back. This is lower than I'd normally place a button. Because I've used the print for the body, I don't want to make a full bodice, so she's going to have a kind of wide belt or corset around the waist. That should completely hide the button. The other button anchoring the joint goes on the top of the head, so while I'm sewing that one on, I thought I'd use it to attach the hanging ribbon. I use Gutterman top stitch thread for all the jointing and beading. I think that's worked pretty well. Before I bead the arms and legs, I want to start adding some colour to the face. I'm using Derwent Chroma Flow, which are high pigment blendable coloured pencils. These work really well on fabric. I'll put a link to them in the description. I'm starting off with some slate grey around the eye area, then I'll add some blue and black, blending them together until I get the depth of colour I want, and fading it out around the edges with a blending pencil. Once I've got the shading pretty much how I want it, I add a red clown nose. I don't want a hard edge around the nose, but I don't want it blended out quite as much as the eyes, so I'm going over it with a burnisher rather than the blender. The burnisher is a little bit harder than the blender, so it's better for fine details. It's worth experimenting with blending techniques to see what works best for you. I'll be adding more detail to this later, but first it'll need a couple of coats of fixative spray to stop it smudging. While that dries, I'm going to make the arms and legs. I'm beading the limbs with glass beads to give her a bit of weight. I want to try and avoid visible knots and stitches wherever possible, so I'm going to try and bead both arms with a single thread. I'm starting where the button is on the back, so I know the knot will be hidden, and bringing the thread out through the shoulder. The needle needs to be long enough to pass it through from one shoulder to the other, so I'm using the 3.5-inch doll needle. I want to alternate the beads between white and red. I think when she's hanging up near Christmas lights or a window, those are going to create some really nice patterns. I think this needle might be too wide to go through some of these beads. Glass beads are quite fragile. I don't want to force it and risk breaking them, so I'll have to try a smaller needle. This needle fits through the beads much easier, but will it be long enough to go through the body? 7 of these 6mm beads is usually enough for the arms. I'm adding a metal bead to the end and one of the bells. Then I'll pass the needle back up through the bead holes, taking care not to snag the thread. Now I need to take that thread through to the other shoulder. The needle is just about long enough. I'll bead this arm the same way as the first one, then fasten off the thread next to the button where I started. I'm hiding the anchor point for the legs just below the waist where it'll be hidden by the skirt. "11 of these beads is usually about right to give an overall doll size of around 7 inches, but I'll measure it just to be sure. I'm going to try and bead both legs with a single thread, same as I did with the arms. I'm hoping I've allowed enough thread. Okay, it looks like I didn't allow quite enough thread to fasten it off. It's not the end of the world, but I'm going to have to start those again. This thread is much longer than I'd normally work with, so I'll just have to be really careful not to get it tangled. There we go, this time there's plenty of thread left. I'll fasten that off near the waist so it looks nice and tidy. Now, time to check the colour on the face. I'm just running my knuckle across the centre of the eye shading to check for smudging. It's transferred just a little on my finger, so I'm going to give it another coat of fixative. While I wait for that to dry, I'll work on the clothing. I want to make a sort of wide band around the waist with this red velvet ribbon and a couple of buttons on the front. If you've been around a while, you'll know I struggle with the texture of velvet, but in this case, I think it's going to be worth it. Ideally, I'd wear some nitrile gloves for this, but I don't have any at the moment, so I'm improvising with some bits of tape to cover some of the velvet pile. This at least makes it a little bit easier to handle. I'm making a double layer tutu in burgundy and silver grey lace. I'll stitch these to the doll, then position the ribbon so it sits just above them. I'm gluing the ribbon in place with some super thick tacky glue so I get a nice neat finish with no messy stitches anywhere. That coloured pencil is totally fixed now, so I can add some detail to the face. I'm using some black resin coat buttons for the eyes. As usual, I'm stitching those in place with some top stitch thread. If you're enjoying watching this little one take shape, don't forget to hit that like button and let me know. This helps the video get seen by more people. You can also subscribe if you like, so you don't miss the next one. I'm giving her some creepy cute clown makeup with Derwent Line Maker ink pens. I think a couple of little stitches will look cute on the mouth, then she needs a little colour pencil on the lower lip. A tiny dab of white acrylic paint will give the nose a bit of a shine. Perfect. I've made her a neck ruff with some vintage look cotton lace. Now I need to decide what to do with her hair. Initially I was going to use a red for the hair, but I feel like she needs a contrasting shade. So I'm using some super chunky acrylic yarn in a rich purple. This one is from the Signet Mythically Chunky range. I'm needle felting it in with the Clover pen style tool and 3 38 gauge needles. I want it to be quite wild and bushy, so I'm gonna cover the whole scalp area row by row. I'll need to cover that button and work around the ribbon, so I think she's going to have a side parting. I need to unravel all of this and pull out the loose fibres, then I'll find something to make a bow and tie it at the side so it looks cute. I've named her Tippy. If you like this little clown girl, here's another one I think you'll love. Go watch that one now and I'll see you next time. Bye!